Oh boy. Okay, so this is much better. Okay, fine, cool. I'm gonna have to do this and then this. I think the camera is in good position. Oh, the camera's actually in front of the chat. So what am I gonna do with the chat is maybe put that over here. But a bit smaller maybe. There you go. Wonderful. Cool. So I'm just gonna jump right into it. I don't know how long I'm gonna go. Maybe I'm just gonna go for a few hours. I think last time was a bit over 2 hours. But people wondering, I am going to save the VOD. It's gonna be available on my Twitch. I'm gonna upload it on my Google Drive as well. So if anybody needs it at some point, then you can download it and watch it there as well. And then somebody else also uploaded my final stream, my last stream that I did somewhere last year. If you're interested in watching that, I'm gonna put that in the chat so you can maybe save that for later if you missed it last year, or if you just want to watch it again. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Cool. So let's just play the Glow song, which I'm gonna imagine most of you've probably heard already. So for people wondering what I was using in the intro for visuals, it's this Windows app. It's called Mini Meters. It's quite cheap and it comes with a whole bunch of modules. You got a spectrogram, peak LUFS meter, stereo meter, waveform, oscilloscope, and spectrum analyzer. And you can also, I think, yeah, if you press Control, you can put each module wherever you want. And it's really great if you want to do some. If you want a visual, or if you want to kind of have a visual when you're listening to a song on Spotify, for example, you just want to quickly check what it looks like in an oscilloscope. That's all here. It's also VST, so you can just plug this into Ableton and then it streams to the Windows app. So that's pretty cool. So I'm gonna close this and then I'm just going to get right into it. So the main idea of the song was to make a song that had a strong lead together with like a strong bass. One of the things maybe you've heard of, maybe you haven't, I used to make drum and bass, and when you listen to some drum and bass songs, one of the techniques that people use sometimes is they have a song with a arpeggiating bass line with a really strong lead on top. And I really like that kind of approach to a drum and bass song, and I kind of want to do something similar. So just to give you an example of what I mean. So you got that 1/8 arpeggiating bass line and then with like a strong lead on top. And that's something that I wanted to experiment with and to kind of recreate into a chill synth song that's a little bit heavier, maybe a little bit more danceable, but at the same time still kind of has that chill synth signature to it, I guess. So I played around with a melody first on my keyboard on my PC. I didn't have my synthesizers at the time yet, so I was just messing around on my keyboard, and I came out with the main melody of the song. And then I just put in the bass line and the second melody. Let me actually check when I started the project. Okay, so I started it in January, at the middle / end of January, and this was the first version of the song that I had. Wait, you can't hear anything, I think. Local. That was the first version of the song I had. It's quite simple, like the sound design, the mix tone. It's not really a lot of work put into it yet. But that was the main idea. And when I get to this point where I have this really basic idea down, and it gives me inspiration and motivation to work on it more, that's when I know, like, I really want to finish this song. I really need to finish this song. That's kind of the feeling I need to have in order to really feel motivated to continue working on something. So I knew when I had this very early version, I knew that I wanted to finish it. So I kept working on it a bit more. This is when the drums started to take shape a little bit. And then we have the third version. This was at the end of January, so at this point I was working on it for about 2 weeks, just kind of on and off. So at this point, it really started to take shape. The bass and the drum is kind of there. The lead isn't really there yet, but it was kind of what I had. At this point, I was also already doing the breakdown. And then I took kind of a break from the song and just kind of production in general. I had kind of a big writer's block, and then when I got back to it in March, I was at this point. And then when I worked on it a bit more, mostly the lead at this point was just getting a lot of work done. So that's pretty much it. In terms of like the song itself, it's quite simple, but there's still a lot going on in here that I'm gonna talk about. I found the song to be quite simple. It's a little bit short as well. It's like just over 3 minutes, but I really like the vibe. And sometimes songs don't really need to be that long. You know, I've heard songs that are like 2 minutes, sometimes even less, and they can be really cool. Even if you tell a really short story in a song, it can still be a really nice story. So let's start with the drums, and we're going to jump into them. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to take off all the processing on all the drums. There you go. Okay, so for the let's take a look on the kick. So the kick is from a sample pack. It's on Splice. I don't know if you can still buy it. It's quite old. Oh, I need to log in. Yeah, I'm gonna do that another time. I can go into browser. Yes. So it's a sample pack on Splice. I might be able to just look it up on Google. Let's see. Splice Chillwave 2. So it's this sample pack. There's 3 sample packs. It's just, you know, Chillwave, Chillwave 2, and Chillwave 3. And I think this is really good sample pack. This one is the 3rd one and the 1st one. This is my go-to if I just want some quick samples. Sometimes I'll go into different sample packs, but this is the one that I mainly use. How old am I? I am 26. I'm 26 years old. Overall length of the song is 3 minutes 22 seconds, and the intro is 53 seconds. Why? There's not really any particular reason for it. It's just whatever sounds good. I actually thought the intro was a bit long at one point, but I think the intro has enough variation and enough of a it kind of sets the ambient and the tone of the whole song. So I'm not actually too worried about that. It's just whatever the song needs. If the song needs a long intro, then you can give it a long intro, like I did on some earlier songs. So this is the sample. So let's take off all the processing. It's a pretty nice kick. One of the things I like to do in Ableton, when you warp a sample in Ableton, you can play with the transient preserve. And what the transient preserve does is it's like a volume envelope. So if I put the transient preserve to 0, you get like a really, really short clicky kick. And at 42, it was just a little bit shorter. So imagine you take the sample and you do this. I find this a really useful way to just really quickly like shape the kick a little bit, because if it was at 100, then it would be too long. So now you have kind of a little bit, I think it's might even be a little bit of reverb at the tail. So just to kind of tighten the kick a little bit, make it a bit shorter. What I did on the kick was first I put an EQ on there. So there were some frequencies in the kick that I didn't like. For example, these. I like doing this to most of my kicks. I find that this frequency can be kind of annoying to me. It's just not really something I like in kicks. It makes the kick a little bit too high, and I like when kicks have some weight to them and when they sound heavy. So that's usually what I take out. This was kind of like a tick on the kick attack, and you can hear that. And I found that in this kick that was just a bit too loud. Usually I this doesn't happen with every kick, but I find that in a kick like this, or like a 707 kick, for example, I find that to be kind of annoying. Is there usually a high cut on kicks in synth or chillwave? I think a lot of that like high cutting, low passing / lo-fi stuff happens in the master channel. But you can definitely go into your drum bus or just on your kick and give it kind of a bit of a lo-fi feel by just giving it a low pass. I don't really do that anymore. I used to do that a lot, but I don't really do that anymore. I find that if you really want to get a more lo-fi-esque feeling, it's usually better to do it in the master channel, because everything kind of gets glued together, and then everything sounds coherent when you lo-fi it. But yeah, this is definitely something that some people do. Oh yeah, and then I also just boosted the low end again to kind of make it a little bit more hefty. I found the kick to be quite good this way already. There's some compression going on, but it's very slight. So you can see the dry wet is at 36%. So it's really just to kind of emphasize the attack of the kick. Just to kind of give that initial transient a little bit more click. And then I'm using Soothe on the kick as well. For people that don't know, Soothe is a VST that what it does is it recognizes recognizes resonating frequencies, and then it takes those down as much as you want. So just to give you an example, I'll just do this on the whole music group, just to give you a good idea of what it's doing. So nothing's going on yet, and then when we increase the depth, you're going to see that all those resonating frequencies get picked up, and then they get taken down a bit. And this is really cool. What I think is really cool is when you press delta, it like lets you listen to whatever it's cutting off. It works quite well, and I really like this VST because what it does is sometimes there are resonating frequencies in your sound, and when you're listening to your mixdown for too long, your ears get kind of tired, and sometimes those resonating frequencies you can't really pick them up that well anymore. And I find Soothe through because it's just a VST, it's just an AI that's doing this. Like, this is not going to get tired listening to in this case the kick. So I find this a really good way as kind of like a benchmark. Just kind of put this on the kick, for example, and then see, is it taking away any resonating frequencies? And do I want it to take away the resonating frequencies? Sometimes I don't need it to take them away, because maybe it's part of the sound of the kick and it needs to be there for it to really shine. But in this case, this region was something that I wanted to focus on. So you can hear that it's a little bit like that tick again that I was talking about in the EQ. And just, it's not taking it away completely, but it's just kind of toning it down a little bit. And that makes the kick a little bit more soft, I guess, in the whole mixdown. The kick is actually not running through the drum bus in this case because I thought it didn't really sound that nice when it was going through all of these effects. So this one is just running to the final drum bus, so not in the group. Let's take a look at the snare. So the snare is a layer of two samples. The first one is a chill wave sample again, which sounds like this. I really like that sample. I've actually used it a few times already. And there's some processing going on in this. So it definitely sounds very different to what it originally sounded like. So first I'm running it through a saturator just to give it a little bit more grit, a little bit more roughness. It's running through an EQ where this isn't like a standard snare EQ or anything. Again, this is most of the EQing and compression I'm doing isn't like a preset or a standard thing. It's mostly contextual. So if in this case the snare asks me, the snare asks for this type of EQ, then that's what you do. I see some people asking questions like, which compressor settings are good, which compressor settings are the best, but it completely depends on the mixdown. It completely depends on what you're trying to do and what your kick is and such. For the compression, I'm using Pro C from FabFilter. I really like this plugin. When you want to do some compression, you want to get a little bit more detailed. I suggest going with a VST. What I'm doing here is I'm really accentuating the initial transient of the snare. So if I were to look at this in an oscilloscope, which I highly recommend everybody should get, you can see that it has this like click at the start right now. And that's really just gonna really give that snare a strong initial punch. That's running through another saturator. I don't really know why I used to in this case, but here we are. And that's just making it a little bit more distorted. That's running through a multi-band preset that I made, which is literally just two Ableton multi-band presets after each other. I'm going to get a little bit more in depth into why I don't use this anymore. But just keep in mind that this mixdown is a few months old, and at that point I wasn't really too detailed about multi-bands yet. But this is just a preset I use, and it's something I've been using for years. I just find that the combination of these two presets, which is a standard multi-band comp and multi-band compression, that's the names of the presets, I found that it just kind of gave me some cool results. So I put them in one rack and then just put the amount at, in this case, 24. And then the snare is going through a shaper box. And what a shaper box in this case does is it just does a volume envelope. So basically what you're seeing is just volume. If we look at a oscilloscope again, we can see that shaping of that snare a little bit better. So you can see that like this initial, oh, let's put it like this. So you can see that like initial attack is still there, and then it just kind of goes down in volume and then it comes back up. And the reason I'm doing that in this particular case is I found that the kick already has so much character and so much mid-end. And that's why when I layered these snares on top of the kick, it was a bit too much. I tried going in on like putting the kick and the snare together and then pushing it through a clipper or a saturator, but it just didn't really give me the results I needed. So just by kind of playing around with, in this case, shaper box, it kind of gives you that initial transient, but then where in this region is where the kick really kind of lets through the body of the kick itself. And as you can see, the snare on top, I kind of did the same thing. For this snare, I'm using a disco snare sample, which sounds like this. And as you can see, I can't remember who asked the question, but I am doing a low pass on this one. I felt like there was already quite enough high end in this snare that I didn't really need it in this one anymore. So I'm just gonna cut it out. And together they kind of sound a little bit nice. But as you can see on this one, I took the initial transient. It's a bit like a clap, really. It's not really transient, it's a clap, and I just put it in front, and that kind of gives it that disco feel where there's like a clap right in front of the snare, and it sounds a little bit loose as a result. Have you always used Ableton, or have you jumped around? I started with an FL Studio actually. I used FL Studio for like, I don't know, maybe like 5 months, and then I went to Ableton, and that was 11 years ago, so I've only ever used Ableton. I did use Logic for about 9 months, for a while, because I did a audio production course, But yeah, I didn't like Logic. I don't know. It didn't really fit my workflow. I felt. I really like Ableton because of how it looks visually. And Logic and FL Studio just don't really do it for me. Let's take a look at the hi-hats. There's some interesting stuff going on here as well. So we're just gonna get rid of all that. Oh, by the way, the snare group, so all the snares, the 2 snares are going through a DS10 drum shaper, which is like a transient shaper. You can use like a compressor to do some shaping as well. I like DS10 because it's really quick and easy. You can just turn up the attack, just turn down the sustain. It's easy this way. That's running through a multi-band fat filter multi-band compression, where I'm focusing on the fundamental. So the fundamental just kind of goes down every time. And as you can see, there's very, very slight attack on it. I found that frequency was really kind of messing around with the kick. And that's going through a disperser as well. And I'm going to go into dispersers a little bit more when I'm done with this project. It's quite interesting. So for the hi-hats, let's enable all the processing. So what I did is I took a sample from Splice, a Comtrue sample pack. Let's see. So again, I'm doing the same thing as I did with the kick by shortening the body of the hi-hat a little bit, just to make it a little bit more snappy. I felt like it was just too long on its own. To just make it a little bit shorter. And then what I did is I duplicated the same hi-hat and I lowered the volume a little bit. If I play them at the same volume, you can really hear that it's the same hi-hat. And the problem that you have when you just use the same sample over and over again is it sounds really like electronic. It sounds like a drum machine. And I don't always like that. I like it when hi-hats sound a little bit more human and are a little bit more natural as a result. What are my computer specs? I have so I'm using 32 gigs of RAM, and then I'm also using an i9 10900K, which is, I don't know if that's, I think that's 8 cores, but I'm not sure. Huh. Oh, it's actually 10 cores. That's interesting. But yeah, I upgraded my PC last Christmas because there were some project files that were a bit too intensive, and I just got a pretty powerful CPU that I'm really happy with, and the 32 gigs is helping out a lot. I have only run into one project file that gave me some issues, but that was because there was just way too much stuff going on. But other than that, it's going really well. I really do recommend that you upgrade the CPU and the RAM if you want to take this stuff a bit more seriously in the long term. This is just an EQ that's on there by default. That's on all my audio channels. So what I'm doing in order to kind of spice up the hi-hats a little bit and to make them sound more natural is, first of all, I lowered the volumes on the second hi-hat, but then I'm using a frequency shifter and I'm fine-tuning it by, in this case, about minus 60 hertz. You can go a little bit lower. You can even go higher as well. I felt like going lower sounded nice. So let's take a look when we combine them. So just by changing the pitch, we already have kind of a more natural feel. It sounds completely different, even though it's like a really, really small change. And then I'm using a DS10 drum shaper again, just to kind of get rid of some of that transient in the hi-hat. And this is specifically the second hi-hat. And then by taking down the volume, you kind of get a more natural sounding result. So even though we're using the same hi-hat again, by changing the pitch really, really slightly, and by turning the volume down slightly, making it a little bit shorter maybe, you can end up with some pretty cool results. That sounds a lot more natural. The problem with the hi-hats was that these are the only hi-hats in the song, and as you can see on the imager, they were really, really narrow. So there was they're pretty much mono. So we had to fix that. So the first thing I did was cut out some low end from the hi-hats. There was just a little bit of low end rumble going on that I picked up on one of the EQs on my master channel. So just to be sure, that's what I did. Then I used DS10 again, just to do a little bit more drum shaping, a little bit more shaping on the hi-hats. I tried using this one, and when I turn this one off, you can see it's very, very mono. And then when I turn it on, it has ever so slightly a bit more information. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that on stream, but it's just very, very tiny amount, very tiny widening of that image. And the thing is that if you want to widen something, you need to have some information in the stereo. And I felt like just boosting it ever so slightly sets me up to do some more processing. So what I did then is I used an audio effect rack. For people that don't know, don't use Ableton, an audio effect rack is pretty much like a way for you basically split the audio into two, and then you can process one channel in one way, and then the second channel in a different way, and they play at the same time. So what you can use that for is, for example, a snare. You can have the reverb channel of the snare and then the dry snare. And then you can go into the reverb and do any processing you want. Maybe you want to use like a phaser on the reverb. Maybe you want to use a compression on the reverb. You can try those things. Have you tried widener? I haven't. Is that a VST? I'm going to imagine it's a VST. Is it this one? It looks really cool. Has that cool aesthetic. Or is this a different one?
Wider works as both a signal to an awe-inspiring degree.
That's cool. I'm imagining it probably is like a Haas effect, which I'm actually using in this processing. So what I did is I split up the hi-hats into two different, in this case, effect chains. And what I did for the side, let's take a look. So the first thing is I use the Haas effect, and basically what the Haas effect is, it delays the left channel and the right channel. So it delays, in this case, the right channel by 10 milliseconds, and it's not delaying the left channel. And by doing that, you get this really crazy stereo effect. So if we look at the imager now, we can see that there was a lot of stuff going on in the sides, but when we listen to it in mono, it sounds a little bit weird. You can kind of hear the delay effect in mono. And that's not really something I really liked. So what I did is I used a frequency shifter again. And the reason I'm using a frequency shifter is I'm splitting up the sides and the mids into two different channels, basically. and I'm delaying on one channel by, in this case, 9 milliseconds. Because at this point, without the frequency shifter, the hi-hats are identical to the second one, the mid channel. I'm gonna have phasing issues. So if I change the pitch, in this case, I'm increasing the pitch, it kind of negates that phasing from happening, because at that point, technically, it's like a different waveform. It's a different hi-hat. And as a result, the phasing, it might still be there, but I'm not really noticing it, and I'm not really noticing it that much. I guess it's something that I if it's there, I genuinely have a hard time noticing. But by using the frequency shift, we can just shift that up. And then I'm using a DSTen again, just to get rid of the initial attack. I didn't really want to have any snappiness in the hi-hats on the side channels. I listened to your latest album on SoundCloud, very cool. Is it really possible to make such music only on VST and without using real synthesizers? Yeah, definitely. The only thing in this song that is from the synthesizers is the sound in the intro, like that ARP sound in the intro, and then there's like an ARP in the breakdown, and then there is one lead that's taken from the synth. But you can definitely make this kind of music on VSTs. If you're wondering, Holmes' first album, which is, you know, his most popular work, was all made with VSTs, basically. He just used Mini V, I think, for all of the sounds. And if you're interested, you can actually find some of the streams he did for breaking down some of the songs on his first album, if you're interested in that. Half of the music in this scene is Arturia, Mini V, or Serum. That's true. I actually only started using these synths a couple months ago. I think on the EP I did recently, there's only like a very small amount of sounds that come from the synths, because I only had one of them for like a week or two when I was making the music. So you can definitely make this stuff with VSTs, and I think I'm actually gonna go into how to make stuff sound a little bit more like analog, I guess. Yeah. Owen's first album was Odyssey. Yeah, that's true. That's the one that Resonance is on. So to go back, so the side channel is has effect, frequency shifter, just to change the pitch, so we don't get any phasing issues, and then just taking out the hi-hats, the transient out of the hi-hats, and we get this nice cool stuff going on in the sides. And then the mid channel is just nothing, no effects on it. And then when we look at the image here afterwards, we can see that the hi-hat is immediately a lot wider. So without the effect, it's very, very narrow. Oops. And then this is much wider. I'm going to turn down this volume if I accidentally press it again. You could potentially still go in here and increase that widening a bit with these bands. But I didn't really find that necessary in this particular song. And if you want to check out if this sounds good, you can always use a utility to kind of check what things sound like in the sides. So I found that was definitely enough information in the sides. I don't really do too much stereoing in drums if I use like this many elements. So there's only a few elements here. If I have a drum group that has way more, like has maybe like 10 different hi-hat channels or whatever, then I'm probably gonna pattern them. But in this case, I didn't really feel that was all necessary. So everything except for the kick is going through a multi-band compression. I'm focusing on this mid end mainly because the bass I felt was the bass really needed the space. So there's some attack on here just to make sure that snare has the snappiness and the clickiness, so that doesn't get ruined too much. But it's, as you can see, it's definitely like the snare. It just gets taken down quite a lot. I'm using a Pro Q on this, and I'm actually doing a low pass, but it's very minimal. It's a very minimal effect. Really precise processing on the hi-hats. Yeah, it's something it's like it's all very logical to me to like go in and like the way you should think of is like a real drum set. Like if you have a real drum set in front of you, if you have one hi-hat, only one hi-hat, and you want variation in the sound, like how are you going to do that? Well, you're probably going to hit it differently, right? Because if you hit it at exactly the same place with exactly the same strength every time, it's gonna sound the same every time. So when you think of drums in the sense of a real drum set, then that immediately gives you so much information. Like, oh, I can maybe change the timing of these hi-hats a little bit. Maybe I can change the pitch on this one hi-hat. Maybe I can open this hi-hat a little bit more. Maybe I can close this hi-hat a little bit more. And I feel like that mindset of thinking about it as a real drum set, it really helps to like figure out what to do on the processing. But I also just kind of like processing things. I think it's interesting. So yeah, we got the Pro Q. Then I'm using the multi-band preset again, just doing a little bit of multi-band compression here. I already did that in the snare, but it's just to kind of glue things together. I'm using a warm tube just to kind of give it a slight distortion. That's running through a compressor again. I'm using it at 60% dry wet, so it's a little bit parallel compression, and then I'm using Soothe again. Keep in mind, so the kick isn't actually in this channel, so because I didn't use Soothe anywhere yet, that's what I'm doing here. So we have the drum group without the kick, and then we have the drum bus, which is everything, including the kick. And that has a clipper on it, which I'm going to talk about later. And then just the Pro MB, just to really boost the high end, which when I look at it now, it's kind of dumb because I took out the high end with this EQ, and then I boosted it again here. This is probably because of the fact that I took breaks in between working on this song. So I probably just forgot about this EQ being there. I don't recommend taking out high end and then putting it back in later. But this is just what happened here. So everything together sounds... Oh, actually, there are still some extras, which is... Let's see. So that's the 606 hi-hat, 909 hi-hat. Both of these are open hi-hats, and then I'm using a 707 cowbell. So I'm using all the classic drum machines here. And then this group, as you can see, I have an EQ on, a low pass and a high pass, just to make this sound a little bit like, just give it that real, like overly exaggerated lo-fi character. And then a very small detail in the variation is, in this instance, this is the cowbell timing, and then in this case it's like this. So it's just a very slight variation. I don't think anybody's gonna notice, but I do, so that's important to me. And then everything together sounds like this. And then on the cowbell, I'm actually doing a house effect, which you might be able to pick up. Do you sketch at home with headphones on and mix in a normal studio? I don't have the opportunity to put monitors at home. So this is my bedroom. This is where I do everything for my music. I prefer using speakers. The main reason I like using speakers, so people that mainly use headphones, what they say is they don't like the crossfeed, right? They don't like the idea of something coming out of the right speaker and then also hearing it in your left ear. They don't like that idea. But the thing is that when you just go around on your day, every sound around you has crossfeed, right? If somebody's talking to you on the right, you're also going to hear it on the left, right? Like, for example, right now there's sound coming out of my window from outside, just normal ambient sound. If I close my right ear, I'm still going to pick it up on my left ear. So working on speakers to me is way more natural because that crossfeed makes it more natural. I find that if I use headphones, I don't hardpan stuff at all because it sounds a bit weird to me. Hey, I recently got into the chill synth genre and made a couple of songs, and most of them were actually made on Mini V because I just had very nice arps and basses. I didn't really use it a lot back then because it looked a bit confusing. But now I use it on almost everything. Also wanted to say I really like your music. Oh, thank you. And I really like Mini V. I think Mini V is if I could choose like one VST to make one song, if I only could use one VST in one song, then I probably use Mini V. I think it's really, really good. And that brings us to the music, which is this. So let's start with the main sound, which is the main harp, which is this. That's the main melody. So we have here a Prophet V. I like kind of switching between, just kind of. I feel like they do kind of both have their own signature sound. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just play this for a bit, and I'm gonna go to the toilet because I really, really need to pee. So I'm just gonna play this on loop. So just enjoy this. Okay, where is the up? Okay, here it is. So this is a preset that I made. It's called Simple Soul Lead, which I did change a little bit. So I'm gonna go and check what that originally sounded like. Pretty similar, I think. So what this is just basically two saw waves detuned. if you ever wonder like, how do you make chill synth sounds? It's mainly just saw waves. Pretty much always saw waves. The second oscillator is a little bit fine tuned, and all of that is just running through a low pass filter. And I am using the chorus effect in Prophet. I personally think this one sounds really good. And then I just made the main melody. That's running through a Valhalla Vintage reverb. This one sounds really cool. I really like this reverb. There's so much you can do with this one. It's different colors, different modes. I really like that. Are there any free synths you would recommend using while writing chillwave? If you want to get a really good free VST, it's Vital, actually. This is pretty much like this is all around like an amazing synthesizer, especially for being a free synthesizer. It's fucking crazy. It's basically, it's like if I bought Serum years ago, if this was out, then I would have never bought Serum. At that point, it's just really fucking good. And it's free. It's free, completely free, super fucking powerful. They have a Discord as well where you can buy, not buy. I mean, you can buy presets, but on the Discord that they have, where is it? On the Discord they have all the presets here, which people just constantly make presets and post them in this channel. It's insane. It's a really cool community, and it's just an insane synthesizer for being free. I highly recommend that one. And try to learn that one. It can be really complex if you want to. I think it's a really good synthesizer to learn synthesis and just in general use. To go back to this main ARP, I'm using in Ableton. It's called Chorus Ensemble, but it's pretty much just a vibrato effect, which I like to do on synths. It just gives them a lot more character and a little bit more randomness. Just gives them more life in general, I feel. So that always sounds really nice. So at this point, really with that reverb, love that reverb, sounds amazing. And I'm running it through an RC20 with some more wobble. So the reason I like using two wobbles, two vibratos, is because one vibrato is going at one rate, and then the other one is going at a different rate. And what that means is when you add them up on top of each other, it becomes random. It's obviously not really like literally random, but it does create that random sound. So by just combining two different vibratos at two different rates and two different amounts, you can really create like some randomness in the detuning, which I quite like. That's also, the RC20 is also doing some distortion, and then it's also doing some space, which is a reverb. I don't really remember who asked me, like, can you make this kind of stuff with VSTs? Can you make this stuff with VSTs instead of hardware synths? You can, and I find this plugin to sound really, really good for that. And I mean, this lead is made with VSTs. It's not coming from any synthesizer, so you can definitely do this with VSTs. And that's running through a Pro Q, where I'm taking out some of the mid frequencies and I'm boosting the high end quite a lot, actually. And this just kind of, together with a reverb, it really creates a nice, more powerful sound, which I explained at the start I was kind of looking for. And then it's layered with a different lead, which is Mini V. This is running through a it's a preset I have called quick reverb and delay. There's actually no reverb in this one, I took it out. It's the VHS rack, which you can find on Google. Let's take a look. Here it is. It's by a guy called Brian Funk. And basically what this is just a combination of a bunch of different effects. So we got frequency shifter, saturator chorus, glue compressor, 2 more frequency shifters, and an EQ. And this really kind of makes the sound a lot warmer. And I like using this on, it's like a quick way to make something sound more old and retro and analog and warm. I already said warm, but extra warm. I'm running that through an OTT. I don't particularly like using OTT anymore, and I'm going to go into why a bit later. And that's running through a Valhalla delay, which is just a fantastic sounding delay. Oh, the text isn't visible. That's good. That's good of you to say. Yeah, my internet provider has some issues. So if the stream goes out or whatever, you should let me know. Both of these, as you can see, they're actually very slightly panned. The one on top, this one, it's panned to the right very slightly. This one panned to the left slightly, because it kind of widens the sound a little bit, especially when you lay 2 leads on top of each other that play the same notes. You can just kind of split them up a little bit in the stereo, and it makes it really, really wide. But I don't like overdoing it, because otherwise you lose some information in the in your mono. I'm boosting the high end on these on this group. I'm running it through a Soothe again, but this one is actually doing a sidechain, which I'm going to get into a bit later. I love using Soothe as a sidechaining tool, and then I had an image just to kind of check what it looked like. So you can see it's very live. There's a lot of stuff going on at the sides, but there's also some stuff in the mid and in the mono, which is important, I feel. It sounds a bit weird if something is like not there at all in mono. So I just like doing it that way. All of this is then going, or basically what I wanted to do was just kind of create some variation in the feeling of the song by going into a second melody. Which is this one. So, what I was just talking about with Soothe, so basically when you have two sounds layered on top of each other, it can like all of those frequencies are going to be added on top of each other, and sometimes it can be a little bit problematic where one sound is difficult to hear because it's just being overpowered and it just kind of clashes a bit. And with Soothe, what you can do is you can do sidechaining. So it's basically the same as I explained before, where it recognizes resonating frequencies. But in this case, it recognizes the frequencies from your sidechaining signal, which in this case is this lead. So every time this lead is playing, it's taking out resonating frequencies from that lead in the main ARP. And you can actually see this happening when I just solo the main ARP. You can see it's kind of taking those frequencies out. And that just kind of opens up a bit of space for the lead to kind of come through. It's easy to overdo this because if you overdo this like this, it sounds horrible. So it's just way too much sidechain, which is what you also have with like drums. If you sidechain your drums to your music group or whatever, and you do way too much, it starts to get noticeable. Like it starts to get way too noticeable. But this just kind of frees up just that little bit of space for the lead to really shine through. This lead is also Prophet. It's the same preset, but in this case I added a triangle wave, took down oscillator B a little bit, and probably changed some stuff on the filter. And I'm probably also playing it at a lower octave, I think. All of that is running through the same preset that we used on the main ARP. Where is it again? This one, the quick reverb and delay one I have. And this one actually does have the reverb on it still. Valhalla Room using here. Running through that same VHS effect, a little tiny amount of OTT, and a Valhalla delay. That's running through a vibrato again, and an EQ. I'm using noise in this lead. And when you use noise, you can sometimes get unwanted low end. It's just like a little bit of rumble in the low end that you may or may not want to have. Personally, I didn't want to have that, so I took it out. Okay, so the main ARP is done. Okay, and then we have this ARP that kind of goes throughout most of the song, except for the breakdown, and that's this one. Which sounds really nice. I really love how this sounds. We've got a mini V doing this, and this is just, let's see, it's 2 square waves. And it's just going through the low pass filter. Pretty basic sound if we take out all the processing. Oh yeah, and then there's also some noise going on as well. Will the stream be recorded? Yes. It will be available on my Twitch channel, and I'm gonna make it available on my Google Drive, and I'm gonna see if the guy that uploaded the last stream is gonna upload this one as well. And if he doesn't, then I'm just gonna upload it on my YouTube channel. Hey Voyage, huge fan. Your music is pure inspiration. Oh, thanks, dude. I'm happy that my music inspires you. I think it's cool. I used to be in a position where a lot of other producers inspired me to make music when I was younger, and it's really cool to kind of inspire people like you now, and hopefully one day you can inspire other people as well, and then let that whole chain continue. I'd love to stay with Gregor. No problem, Luke. You can watch it later if you still want. I'm probably gonna be here for a while longer, I think. But yeah, have a good one, dude. So because I'm using a noise in this sound, again, I'm taking out the low frequencies a bit. Don't want that low end rumble from the noise. I'm running it through a filter, which kind of gives it that interesting rhythm. And I'm using a different timing for the left channel and the right channel, and that just kind of gives it an interesting stereo image. All of that is running through a chorus, and then a Valhalla Room, which is at 100%. And that makes this sound really, really wide, which I quite like, especially because the main ARPs are already so like present in the mono, in like the mono space. So having this one wider kind of, I don't really need too much more information in that in mono really. So widening this one kind of fixes that issue. I'm running it through another high pass, high pass. Sorry, I don't really know why. I don't know why I did that. It's a bit stupid. I'm already doing it, but okay. And that's running through a Soothe again, which in this case isn't doing anything here, but it does do something in the intro. I like using Soothe to kind of introduce elements, because like I said, Soothe recognizes resonating frequencies. So if you take out all those resonating frequencies, then you end up with like this noisy texture. And instead of just using the volume and increasing the volume over time by taking down the depth of Soothe, you kind of introduce the sound in a little bit more of an interesting way. So you can hear in this part, it's really like, it's there. You can hear the noise and the texture, and you can kind of hear the sound. But it's just completely taken down all those harmonic frequencies, all those resonating frequencies. And introducing a sound that way is just kind of interesting, I think. And I personally feel like that works just really, really well. I actually forgot a sound, which is this, which is just mini V again. This is one square wave with a little bit of noise going through a reverb, a vibrato, RC20 again, just to give it a little bit of color and that like analog feel, I guess, and a tiny amount of ring modulation, which if I put it at 100%, makes it sound, it's kind of distorted. So by kind of changing the dry wet a little bit, it gives it that distorted sound, a tiny amount, but just not too much. Then we have, let's see, this ARP, which gets introduced in the breakdown and then gets reintroduced in the outro. And this is basically a mini V instance again. It's one saw wave. It's running through that same reverb and delay effect that I introduced earlier. I like the idea of like reusing reverb and delay presets, because it can kind of give all the elements in your song like a certain level of coherency, where everything just kind of has that same kind of reverb and the same kind of delay, and it kind of makes everything sound as if it's in the same space, which can sound cool. But then again, I mean, you can use different reverbs and different delays on different elements and also create something really cool. So you don't absolutely have to do this, but I feel like it can be a cool thing to do. We have had this lead already. Okay, so there is one lead in the song that I recorded from my Cork Prologue. And what I did in this instance is I recorded the same melody twice. And the main reason for that was because when you play on an analog synth, every time you play a note, it's not going to start on the exact same position of the oscillator. So if you have a sine wave, it might start at the top of the sine wave, but then the next time it might start kind of in the middle, because the oscillators are constantly running. And when you press a key on the keyboard of the synthesizer, it just opens up the amplitude. It just opens up the volume. So the oscillators are constantly running. So it's very difficult to, it's pretty much impossible to press the keys at the same time in the oscillator cycle every time, because you have multiple oscillators running at slight pitch frequency differences. You will end up with a different sounding sound every time you hit the key, and it's a very, very subtle difference. And this is a technique that I actually use, I think, in rock music, where they ask a guitar player to play the same melody 2 different times. And because it's a human playing the guitar, it's gonna sound different. And what you can then do is you can layer those sounds on top of each other and then pan one channel all the way to the right and one channel all the way to the left. And by doing that, you essentially create a super wide soundstage for. In the case of a rock song, it's going to be a guitar, but in this case, I used a lead on my core prologue. All of that is running through Valhalla Shimmer, which I really like as a reverb. RC20, it's doing some wobble, some distortion, a little bit more reverb and magnetic, just to kind of give it some unpredictability. It's running through Soothe, but this one is sidechained to the main amp, so that this doesn't completely get in the way of the main amp. And all of that is just running through a high pass, just to make sure I don't have any low end. And that sounds like this. And I think the distortion in the RC20 is definitely doing a lot. And I really like that kind of distortion feel. You hear that sometimes. I mean, you hear that kind of often actually in chill synth music. Transitioning into the breakdown, we have the lead in the breakdown. So it's that simple saw lead preset again from earlier, but this time it has 2 square waves and a tiny bit of noise. That is then running through the same reverb and delay again. I use this double tracking technique often in synth pop and metal vocals. Yeah, it's I mean it's not just used on guitars, but it's used on vocals and I guess some other instruments as well. I don't think they use it on drums, right? I think that would be a bit weird. But yeah, we have the same reverb and delay preset. Okay. Hey Voyage, quick question. Do you mind if I send you a friend request on Discord after the stream? Yeah, sure. Just add me, and I'll check back on that after the stream is done. By the way, if you guys want to, what you can do is you can go to the chill synth server. Let me get the link. If you go to the chill synth server and you are a Nitro booster on the chill synth server, you can submit a song for feedback once the stream is done, or at the end of the stream. If anybody posts a link in there in the feedback, in the event chat, sorry, you should be able to get some feedback there, if that's something you're interested in. It's in the event announcement channel as well, so you can read it there. Oops. Okay, cool. Let's continue. So like I said, the same reverb and delay. It's running through a vibrato again, and then just some EQ, because I'm using noise, might introduce some unwanted low end rumble, which I just didn't really want to have here. And this kind of changes the feeling of the song. I feel like in the first part it sounds kind of a little bit happy, I guess, and then it kind of changes to a little bit more melancholic melody. I like switching up the mood. I guess it kind of tells a bit of a story. And then we have, this is one sound from the synthesizer, that one lead we looked at, and then this amp, which only plays in the breakdown. Which is running through a Valhalla Vintage Verb and an Ableton Echo. I don't actually use this effect all that much, but I actually recommend it. It actually sounds good. If you don't want to spend money on like a delay VST, this one's actually really good. I quite like it, but I should use it a bit more. That then is running through a house effect again, because it's not a main melodic element at this point, so it doesn't really need to be that present in mono. So just kind of widening it a little bit. I'm using Soothe again, probably a bit too much, I think, on this whole project. But it just kind of clean the sound up a bit, and then because there's some unwanted low end, especially this area, I just kind of took that out. And this is coming straight from the Cork prologue, and I think there is some modulation going on at the end. The really cool thing about working with like a hardware synthesizer when recording stuff is that you can do all of the modulation and automation yourself while it's recording. So you can change any of the buttons you like, which I find very nice about a hardware synth. It kind of gives it a human touch, in my opinion. Then there are some chords that play along in the breakdown. This is just a preset I have, which is two saw waves, slightly detuned from each other, and then just running through a filter. I feel like this is a pretty simple sound. I like saving these as a preset just because it's quick and easy to get going. That's running through a Valhalla room, a vibrato, and then a Pro MB. I felt like these frequencies were definitely problematic. Kind of cleans that up a bit, and then I'm using an EQ8 just to make it a little bit more clean in the high end, which I thought sounded nice. Then I have, let's see. Yes. This is the Cork prologue that's playing right now, actually. There it is. It's running through a gate and a denoiser, because sometimes there's a little bit of noise when you're recording from an external hardware synth. It's something I'm still kind of figuring out how to get rid of. But that's all running through gate and denoiser just to make sure that that noise is taken down as much as possible. We've got some EQ. This is quite severe EQing, but this is really to give it a specific character. So what if I take this out? And then you can kind of hear that noise actually while it's playing. How do you generally come up with all the sounds? It's just kind of like years of playing with synthesizers and learning synthesis, and at one point you get so comfortable with a synth that you're able to just kind of go in and when you have a sound in your head, you can not make it completely like it sounds in your head, but you can get pretty close. It's honestly, it's just like learning synthesis and doing it a lot. When you make stuff with synthesizers and you keep doing it, you keep improving, and then at one point you get so good that it becomes really easy. And why specifically these sounds? I don't know. It just sounds good to me. It's really difficult to explain why. I feel like it's very abstract to explain. you dial the sound in the VST yourself most of the time with what you have in mind. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. It, like I said, it's just kind of like, I don't know how to explain it. It's weird. It's, you just kind of hear it, you know. It's like that inspiration that just kind of goes in your head while you're making the music. It's just like this feeling you have, like, oh, I need to add this type of sound, or I need to add this type of sound. And then because you're really comfortable with synthesis, when you do it for so long, you can just kind of make those sounds because you've done it so many times. So for this one, for example, like this sound is really simple to make. Yeah. Yeah, it becomes easy with experience, basically. Yeah. To go back to those chords, that's running again through that same preset I talked about earlier. But this one is just a Valhalla room. It's actually going at 100% reverb. And all of that is running through Soothe again. I probably shouldn't use Soothe this much, but here it is. Oh, this Soothe actually isn't doing anything at all. It's at minus 18. I can just get rid of this. And then there's in EQ just to get rid of some of that low end, which you can actually kind of hear quite well. Just to get rid of that. And this is coming straight from the Korg Prologue, and I think this is this sounds really, really, really good. If you ever write on a software synth, then re-record it with hardware synth later. I've never actually done that. I feel like if I have a sound that sounds good with a VST, then I'll just use that. Oh, looks like my PR manager joined the stream as well. Welcome. Let's see. For my theme, I'm actually using the dark theme, and I'm just using the color hue at 100% color intensity, and then you can change the color of Ableton, which I quite like. I'm colorblind, so I don't actually know which color this is, but I'm gonna say it's like blue purple-ish. I think. I'm not actually sure. I'm colorblind, so maybe somebody can tell me what color I'm actually looking at. Closer to red. Yeah, it's I guess it's like purple red-ish. But to touch back on the synths, the main reason I like using synths is not really because of the sound. I mean, everybody goes on and on about how an analog synth sounds analog and you can't get close with a digital synth. But that's not true at all, because you can get close with a digital synth. The argument of analog sounds better than digital is, in my opinion, not correct. It's not an argument you can make anymore, because there's so many VSTs to replicate that sound. But the main reason I like it is, like, for example, I have these ARPs in this instance, and when I record these ARPs, that's what I have to use. That's what I have to work with. I can't go in and I can't change those sounds anymore. Like, I can't go in and change the filter cutoff. I can't go in and change the envelope. I can't go in and change the resonance. I can't change the modulation anymore, the automation. It's all recorded, and that's what I have to use. And what this teaches me is to make decisions really quickly. I can record something and then say, okay, I'm going to use that, and then it's out of the way and I'll use it, instead of just like sitting there like half an hour trying to figure out how to make a specific sound, or is this very small parameter in Serum the thing that I want, or do I want it like 1 millimeter to the right or 1 millimeter to the left? It becomes annoying after a while. With analog synths, you just record it and that's what you use. And when I bought my first synth, the Korg Prologue, it immediately made my production much more efficient as a result of just recording something and then using it immediately. And that made me. I came up with more ideas and finished songs this year than I did any other year because of the analog synth. So it's not the sound, it's the workflow that matters to me. And like Downtown Binary says, you have the live like capability of doing the modulation and the automation, which I think is it's really, really fun. I don't know if you can see my cat on my bed actually. He's sitting right in that corner. She's just gonna be chilling there, I think. Quick question. I've been using FL Studio for a few years and pretty comfortable with how to be productive there. I've been wanting to switch and try Ableton. I don't know. I was curious if you'd say it was worth switching. It's the thing is, it's completely up to you. Like, if you think that Ableton supports your workflow better than FL, then you should definitely switch. But all the AWs are the same. All the AWs have the same basic capabilities, and you should 100% use the one that you're most comfortable with. If you think that FL Studio works better for you, use FL Studio. It's not like Ableton sounds better than FL Studio, or FL Studio sounds better than Logic, or Logic sounds better than Reason, or whatever. Everything is basically the same. Just use the AW that you're most comfortable with. It was worth it for me to switch to Ableton, but that's no guarantee that might be worth it for you. But you can definitely try it out. I think Ableton. I don't know if Ableton still has the extended trial, but I know that they extended the trial. Yeah, so right now they have a 90-day trial, which I think was 30 days before. So you can test it out for 3 months, which I think is a pretty good deal. But yeah, to get back to the song, there's one more element, which is this ARP, which plays through the entirety of the song, which is just one note. It's an incredibly simple sound. It's just a 2 triangles, slightly detuned, and this just runs through the entirety of the song. Let's take a listen. And the only thing that it's doing is a very slight modulation on the pitch bend. So if we take a look at that, you can see right before the first part and the second part, it just kind of goes up in pitch. And then it just resolves really nicely. The thing is that all of this, I could probably delete and you wouldn't even notice it because it's just so baked in to everything. Have a listen. You can't even hear it going on anymore. Yeah, you can barely hear it, but yeah. I switched FL to Cubase to Ableton. I liked all of the doors, but feel like Ableton works the best for my workflow, especially when it comes to managing my presets, processing chains, etc. Yeah, that's like the processing chains is something that I hear a lot for Ableton. I personally like Ableton's look. It's like in Logic Pro 10, I never understood this, which is also why I didn't like using it at all. Let's see if I can find a picture. So the problem I have with this is look at how big this top bar is. You lose so much space in your top bar that you don't need that much space. Like you have all that space between the buttons that you're not using for anything, and in Ableton it's really small. And the thing I never understood in other DAWs is why do you have a mixer that looks like an actual mixer? Like why do you have this? This is so big. You're using up so much space, and in Ableton it's literally this part on the side. Why do I need this big of a volume fader when this small of a volume fader is good enough? And Ableton is like, we give you everything you need. It looks basic. you can give it some nice colors, but they don't have like fancy faders or really big mixing tables on your screen or whatever. It's just really, really, really basic. And that's what I like about Ableton. And so it's, for me, it's the workflow and also visually how it looks. Purely why I prefer FL over Ableton was just how simple it is in comparison. It just works. Oh, Ableton over FL, it just works. Yeah, that was my main thing. It's FL Studio. You have like all these different windows opening up constantly, and you have to manage all that. And Ableton is just one screen, unless you're using a VST, but then you literally have one window. And if you use multiple VSTs, yeah, sure, you have to organize those windows, but you're gonna have to do that every DAW. So it doesn't really matter. Cool. Let's look into the bass. So the bass is Prophet. It's a saw wave with a square wave. It's running through a little bit of OTT, which I don't like using anymore, but like I said, we're going to look into that in a second. It's being compressed quite a lot, actually. And I'm using a multiband just to kind of clean up that low end and really control the low end. Usually I take out a lot of this frequency range in my basses. And in this case, I just felt like boosting that low end. Again, you don't always need to do this for any sound, but it's just, this is what this one needed. And then that is then going through another multiband where I'm doing a pretty heavy multiband compression. That's going through a limiter as a way of like doing some gain staging. That's going through Pro Q2, which I like. These are just really small changes, but they do quite make a difference, like, in my opinion. So this is where it turned off and then turned on. I know, it just made it feel a little bit cleaner. Using Soothe again. I'm clipping the bass, which I'm gonna get into in the next project, and then I have Pro Q again. You can see this is when I like. You can kind of see here I'm using Pro Q2 because that's the one I had at the time, and then I bought Pro Q3. That's because I just had that gap in while working on this project. There's just one more thing that I wanted to look at, which is in the intro, which is my personal favorite sound in the whole song. I just had to blow my nose. Oh, looks like we have one more cat inside. So this is Link. You want to say something? Nah, I don't think so. I didn't think so. Oof. So he's blocking my entire screen right now. So move a little bit. Thank you. Yeah. So the way I made this was by recording it into, let's see, by making a recording from my synthesizer, which sounded like this. And this is just basically like a melody that just goes up, an arp that goes up, and then just a bunch of reverb and a delay on there. And then what I did is I duplicated it, and then the duplicate I put 1 octave lower, and that's this one. You can see the reverb and the delays. This is just a Valhalla room and then a filter delay from Ableton. And then this one is 1 octave higher. And then together they just kind of fill up the space a little bit better. My absolute favorite sound in this whole song is this pad, which just has some standard processing on it. Just Valhalla Shimmer, Soothe, a reverb, hybrid reverb from Ableton, an EQ, an ozone imager, and a utility to do some gain staging. But what really makes this sound work is that it has this notch EQ, and then as it moves on, that notch becomes more narrow, and it creates this really cool, like it opens up in a really interesting way. And while I was making this, it kind of reminded me just a tiny bit of the PlayStation 2 intro sound. Hold up. So by just kind of narrowing that notch, it opens up in a really interesting way, which I think that sounds just really cool, and I'm probably going to be using that more in the future. And then there's just a filter that opens up. And then there's one more sound that's on top of all of this. So I'm running this through Granulator 2, which is a Max for Live granular synthesizer. And it's using some chimes, a chime sample that I had, which is added on top of all of that, and that kind of gives it a little like that kind of sparkly high end. It's very subtle, but you may have been able to hear it, me turning it off and on. That's running through a vibrato, frequency shifter, and a grain delay. Can you show the VST how you update the pad? Let's take a look back. Yeah, so I think this was a pad from the prologue. Let's have a listen. Yeah, so this was a pad I made on my core prologue. This was one of the first things I recorded from the prologue, actually. But this is just doing a bunch of processing. The way I made it was by putting a lot of reverb on it, and then just a lot of Soothe. And that made it really like a really soft sounding pad. And then there's one more thing that I was gonna look at, which is it in the ARP section? Yeah. So this is just something I played with the keyboard on one of my synths, a melody. As you can see, the timing isn't perfect, but I actually quite like that. It kind of gives it a bit of a human touch. And this is just a square wave with a triangle, and that, to me, just, I don't know why, it's difficult to explain, but it just sounded really, really fucking cool to me. one more thing is this bass in the intro, which is a massive wavetable called Polysource 2, which I've been using for like 10 years. But yeah, if you're interested, you can get the massive wavetables for Serum. It's a free download somewhere online. Just Google it. It's out there, and that's quite useful, in my opinion. I think that's pretty much it for the project. Let's take a look at the mastering. So for the mastering, there's really only three VSTs that I'm using. The first one is Soothe, which I just like to put on my master chain in general, just to clean up everything together. And let's take a look what it's doing. As you can see, it's doing very minimal amount. It's very little. I'm using a clipping, free clip on this in this case, which I'm gonna get into in a second, and that's running through a Pro L filter. My kitty is meowing at me, and I don't know why. Maybe he wants to say hi. Can you say hi? No, he's very much uninterested. I'm using Pro L, and this is really just a maximizer. But I would have to go into clipping a little bit to explain how I get to the loudness that I do. Because when we check out the LUFS, right around -7.5, which is I'd say is a little bit on the louder side, especially for this genre. But I'm gonna get into that with clipping. I don't really like doing that much on master channels, because I feel like if you're able to do a really proper clean mix down, then really the only thing you need to do in your master channel is just maybe some EQing, and then just making it louder. I think that's like I've always looked at mastering as I don't know, I sometimes see people using so many things on their master channel, and like and EQing and imaging and this and that, and if the song really needs it, then sure, but most of the time I'm not using it that much. So I'm really just making things louder and just kind of cleaning it up with an EQ, or in this case Soothe. Whatever works best for you, but this is what works for me. What I eventually did do with this project, and I've been trying to do it a little bit less, is I recorded the pre-master into a new audio channel, and then in that audio channel I slow down the song a tiny amount. So this is what the original pitch is. And then the actual released version sounds like this. Do you export to Spotify peaking at 0? I noticed they turned down the volume at least 4 dB. That's I'm gonna get into that actually. I'm gonna talk about that. So let's save and go into a new project. And then I'll show you what Spotify essentially does to your music. Because I think it's quite interesting and important to know. So if I get Glow, and then maybe I want to get Origin, because I know that Origin is much quieter. So every song has a master level, an LUFS level, and what that means is perceivable loudness. And one of the things that is has been happening over the years is the loudness war, which is essentially like how can we make things as loud as possible. That's what some people want to make things as loud as possible, and then other people don't like doing that. Other people don't like make things as loud as possible because they think it's a bad thing. I think whatever works for you, and I don't care if something's really loud or if something isn't loud at all, as long as it sounds good. But basically, because some songs are really loud and then other songs aren't loud, we need to normalize it in some way. We need to make sure that we have the same loudness when we listen to music. Because if I go in and I listen to, say, for example, a song from Fleetwood Mac, and I pull up my trusty mini meters again, I can immediately tell that the it's a really dynamic master, so it's pretty quiet, and you can see that it's not like a block of sound. It's quite dynamic. Then when you listen to a really loud song like Angel Blade from Sleepnet, for example, you can see it's like super squashed, but it's actually less loud than the Fleetwood Mac song. The Fleetwood Mac song was actually louder. So look at the levels that this song is peaking at. And you can see that the Fleetwood Mac song is actually louder in comparison to the song we just listened to. But the thing is that because of that loudness normalization, you get to a point where I don't want to change the volume of the songs I'm listening to, right? So I can bet you that Angel Blade song that we just listened to is probably like 11 decibels louder than the Fleetwood Mac song, but it's taken down to the same LUFS level. And as a result, perceivably to your ears, it's the same volume, right? So you don't want to turn down or turn up the Fleetwood Mac song. It's at the same level as the really loud song. And that's what volume normalization is. So if you look at that in Ableton, for example, if you have Glow, which, let's take a look. Glow is minus 8.34 LUFS. And what Spotify does is it normalizes it to minus 14 dB. So that would mean I'd have to go minus... I'm actually horrible at math, so I'm just gonna do it this way. So I have to do a gain reduction of 5.66 dB. And now Glow is at minus 14 dB. But Origin, I masked it specifically at minus 14 dB, so you can see that it's much more dynamic, and Glow is much more squashed. But this is what Spotify does. Spotify will turn down the volume of things that are louder than minus 14, and it will just take it down to minus 14. But even if it does that, it still sounds okay, because we just listened to 2 songs to prove the point, which is that volume normalization works. So should you export things peaking at 0 dB? Always, because you want as much loudness as possible. But Spotify is going to take care of it for you anyway, right? If your song is minus 10 dB LUFS, it's going to take it down by minus 4 dB. You don't have to do that in Ableton, or you don't have to do that in your DAW anymore. Spotify is just going to do that for you. In my opinion, it doesn't really matter what kind of loudness you go for, because it's going to get taken down anyway. So whatever you think sounds good to you is that's what you should use, in my opinion. I think the entire idea of the loudness war these days is just there's no loudness wars anymore, in my opinion, because it all gets taken down to the same volume anyway. So in my opinion, you shouldn't be bothered with the loudness war anymore. But one of the things that I wanted to show was I talked about how I used OTT and how I don't like using it anymore. And then we're gonna take a look at clipping as well. So basically, and this is again why I tell people that they should use an oscilloscope as much as possible. I'm actually going to use Wave Observe, which is a free one, which comes with a waveform mode, which is quite handy. So if I just turn down the volume on Serum and I put a saw wave in, maybe this one. There it is. Let's take a listen. So if my mix is a bit quiet in comparison, Spotify can still normalize it to sound louder, right? Yeah, it's as long as it's not below minus 14 dB LUFS, then it's fine. And if you want to check out what your loudness level is on a file, you can go to this website. It's Ulean. And if you go there, you can find an online tool, file loudness meter, and then you just click on analyze from file and you can upload something. This is supposed to be audio output, not right now, but you can hear this, right? Oh no, you can't. Hold up. Ah, I took it out. There it is. So you can hear the saw wave, right? Okay, cool. So when you have a normal saw wave, looks like this, pretty normal, nothing special. Now I want to use a multi-band compressor because I want to use a multi-band compressor. That's what I want to do. I want it to compress. So I put a multi-band compressor on it, and I put the amount at 0%. So it's not doing anything at all. There should be no effect on my saw wave. But then when I look at my saw wave, it completely doesn't look like a saw wave anymore. It's completely fucked. And the reason this happens is because of the crossover frequencies. So in multiband dynamics, what it does is it splits up your sound into 3 different bands: high band, mid band, and low band. And it's using an EQ or a filter to do that. And because of that, and because it's using a normal EQ, a normal filter, not a linear phase filter, not a dynamic phase or natural phase or anything, it's just using normal filters, normal EQs, it completely fucks up your phasing. And I'm not even touching the amount at all. It's not doing any compression at all, but it completely fucks up your phasing. Now, if you take, in this case, a Pro L, so we can check the level of the saw wave. If we turn off the multiband dynamics, we are peaking at minus 9.2. And you can see we just got a normal, very consistent level. And when we turn on the multiband dynamics, again, I'm not touching it at all. I'm not doing any compression. It's at 0%. All of a sudden, my peak level jumps to minus 7.6, which is like almost a 2 dB difference. So it sounds identical to me, but it's actually 2 dB louder. And this happens all the time with this effect. If you use a square wave, for example, this doesn't look like a square wave anymore. And when I take off the multiband dynamics, it looks like a normal, nice square wave. And as you can see, when we enable it, right now we're peaking at minus 9.2. When we enable the multiband dynamics, again, no compression at all, we're at minus 6.6. So we almost have a 3 dB difference in loudness, in peak level, even though the loudness is exactly the same. But the bad thing about this, if I want to boost this square wave, so if I put the square wave, the utility here, I only have 6.6 dB of headroom. So if I put the gain at +7, well, now I'm distorting. Now I'm getting too high, and you can see that Pro L is doing gain reduction. So if I put this at 8 dB, it's doing even more gain reduction. So right now, if this was a clipper, for example, I would be clipping, as you can see. So I'm already clipping right now. I'm clipping, and I'm doing gain reduction. If I turn off the multiband dynamics, I'm not clipping at all. I actually have even more headroom because I still have 1.2 dB of headroom. So I can increase this to 9.2, and I'm doing like 0.1, 0.2 dB of gain reduction. And what this means is that if you use multiband dynamics in Ableton, it completely fucks up your phase, and there's no way for you to just listen to it. It's no way for you to hear it. So if we, for example, take a very basic saw bass. Let's take a look. Take off the utility. If we enable the multiband dynamics, it might increase the loudness as well, but it's an inconsistent sound, so we don't really know if it's going to increase or decrease the peak level, not the loudness, the peak level. It's actually not affecting it too much, and I actually feel like it's even it has a less high peak actually. So the problem that you have with multiband dynamics, and as a result also OTT because it's a multiband dynamics preset, the problem that you have is that it affects the phasing, it completely fucks the phasing, and you have no idea of how that's going to affect your sound. In terms of the level, you might end up with a sound that is 3 dB, 4 dB louder. You might also end up with a sound that is 1 or 2 dB less loud, less peak level, and it's completely random. Like I don't know if I have this type of sound. Like I don't know how the multiband dynamics is going to react to it in terms of the phasing, and as a result, I don't like using it anymore because I don't know if it's going to fuck up my sound or not. And the only way for me to know is by using an oscilloscope, which again is why I constantly tell people that they should get an oscilloscope. That's just why I don't like using the multiband dynamics from Ableton. If you want a bad multiband dynamics that doesn't have this issue, something like FabFilters Pro MB doesn't actually have this issue. I highly recommend using that. That's also why I try to stay away from OTT and just use multiband from FabFilter. I find that to be, I personally find it to be a lot more effective, efficient. There's one more thing I wanted to show, which is the clipping. And I'm going to use a drum loop for this. It can be a little bit complicated, that's true. But it's something that I'm not saying that you shouldn't use multiband dynamics or you shouldn't use OTT, but you should just be aware of it. You should be aware of the fact that it affects your phasing, and it might end up affecting your phasing in a negative way, or it might not. But you should be aware that it's doing it. Yeah. The clipping is also quite interesting. I started doing this this year. So I have this really basic drum loop, and if I check the level on the drum loop, which is over here, I can see that I'm peaking at -10. Let's try again. So I'm peaking at -0.1. So I'm pretty much peaking at 0, which is ideal. Now, what I can do when I look at the drum loop with my oscilloscope here, I can see it's super dynamic and the peaks are really like high, really peaky. Now, what I can do is I can take a clipping tool. I'm using V-clip, but you can also use FreeClip. It's a free VST and it does almost exactly the same. You just have more control in a paid VST like this. And what I can do is I can take down the ceiling and look what happens to the peaks on the drums. So now those peaks are much flatter, but they sound identical. So if I take off the clipping tool, and then I turn it on again, to me it sounds exactly the same, right? It sounds identical to, well, with clipper or without clipper, it just sounds identical. But there's one big difference, which without the clipping, we were peaking at 0 dB. But if I use the clipper, all of a sudden I'm peaking at -5.3 dB, which means that if I want to, I can go in, I can put a utility, and I can increase this by 5.3 dB. And then let's listen to it again. So what's happened is I've been able to make my drums 5.3 dB louder in perceivable loudness, but they sound identical. But I wasn't able to actually make my drums louder before. And this is key to making a really, really loud mixdown. The key is knowing that there is a difference between measurable dynamics, which is what you can see on the screen. We can measure the dynamics with, in this case, an oscilloscope. We can see that there is a difference between the clipped version and the non-clipped version. We can see the difference, we can measure it, but when we listen to it, the perceivable dynamics are still exactly the same. And if you ever are in a situation where you have to make a really loud mixdown, or you want to make a really loud mixdown, then that's one of the ways to do that. And I've been able to make a really, really loud mixdown a while ago, which, as you can see, is just one big block of sound. You can see it's just been clipped like hell. And I think I was speaking at -3 dB LUFS, but at the same time, even though it's super loud, it's still really, really, really dynamic. And like, it sounds dynamic, it sounds punchy and clean. So when you look at this waveform, like, it shouldn't sound dynamic just by looking at it. Like, this isn't dynamic at all. It's very compressed, it's very clipped, it's super loud. But because of the clipping, it still sounds dynamic, it still sounds punchy. Does it always make you trim your drums with clipper, or just if you feel it needs it? I like doing it very slight amounts in this genre. Like when I make a Voyage song, that's when I use slight amounts of it, because it makes the level a little bit more consistent, and I'm able to control the level a little bit more. And I'm just going to show you in a different mixdown how I do it. So give me a minute to let me go grab another drink and let me go to the toilet for a second. So I'm just gonna have like a minute or 2 or 3 break, and I'll be right back. That's a good song, by the way. That's super fucking cool. You've probably heard. I mean, probably everybody knows it. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'll just let you listen to this song a little bit. This is something I'm working on right now. I think it sounds really cool. I love it. I'm just doing the final touches on it, and then I'm looking for some artwork, and then I'm probably releasing this. But I don't think I'm releasing. I don't think I'm gonna release it this year. It's probably gonna be early next year, I think. Okay, so what I wanted to talk about mainly was the clipping. So we'll just use an oscilloscope again. We have to reset it, which means I have to give me 1 second to find what I'm looking for. Huh. I guess I can use another one. The free one. Wave Observer, where is it? There it is. So, when we look at the drums, so let's loop. And I'll just make them a bit quieter because I'm going to talk over it. So when I'm not clipping, actually I have to do it like this. There you go. So what I can do with clipping is I can, when I enable it, and I don't know if you could see it, but let's disable it for a second. And enable it. And then take a picture of it. Oh, actually, I can just freeze it here. Oops. Okay, let's try one more time. Cool. So when I'm not clipping, you can see the peaking of the kick, right? So you can see that it's peaking around here, and then it's peaking around here, and then it's peaking around here. So that's because it's layered with the snare. But when you enable the clipping, so as you can see, it's kind of peaking around this line. But when I use the clipping, I'm peaking below that line. So I'm gaining a little bit of headroom, which means that I can increase the loudness of these drums. But what it also means is that whenever I do my mastering, and I'm using, in this case, Pro L, I can increase that loudness even more, and the signal that comes in is really controlled because the clipping allows you to set a ceiling, right? So I can take these drums down even more if I wanted to. Obviously now you can hear the clipping, it's distorting, but maybe you like what that sounds like. So I can take it down even, I've taken it down a tiny bit more, and that's just headroom that you're gaining over time, and that's just something if you're aware of the fact that you can gain that headroom by clipping, and you can do the same exact thing in your bass, for example. So let's use Wave Observer again. Hold up, give me 1 second. So you can see at the start it's so much more controlled. It very clearly has like a peak, right? Like it's like a ceiling that it just doesn't go higher than that. But then when I disable the clipping, you can see that there's all these peaks. And the thing is that a clipper will introduce distortion. But when you use that distortion on those peaks, on those transients, the distortion is so it's so short that it ends up sounding pretty much identical. And that's something that I find that you're able to make things so much more consistent and level, and as a result it becomes easier to mix them with other things, and it becomes easier to make a master that is up to the level that you want. So for example, with this song, if I take a look at the LUFS, whoa, actually I need to go back a little bit. There you go. Let's take a listen again. Okay, when it's done processing everything. It's still doing something. There we go. Yeah, so Wave Observer is completely free. I highly recommend it. So basically, by doing this clipping, what's happening is the gain reduction I'm doing is very consistent as well. And as a result of the gain reduction being consistent, I've had moments years ago where I couldn't get my track to the loudness I wanted. Like, I couldn't get my track to, say, minus 10 dB, because whenever I get over minus 11 dB LUFS, I would get distortion. And by using clipping and also some compression and some gain staging, you have so much control over those peak levels. And as a result, when you do your mastering, you don't get those, I don't get that same type of distortion anymore. And I'm able to push loudness much higher than what I was able to do before. Recently, I did a ghost production job for someone where I was able to push the levels quite high, and I was able to make a master that's really, really, really loud, as you can see, but it still sounded good. And I didn't actually check the loudness, but let me quickly try that. So this one is peaking at minus 3.4, and it has a integrated LUFS of minus 6.19. So it's quite loud. It's not super loud, but it's quite loud. And I was able to make this sounding dynamic and punchy and everything. I don't know if I'm allowed to let you listen to it though, so I'm not going to. But you can make things really loud this way, and I find it. Do you prefer Yulin's VST meter or the web version? The web version is handy to because you can just upload an MP3 and it does it in like 5 seconds. But I actually don't use Yulin the VST anymore, because Filter Pro L has LUFS meter built in. So I like using since I'm going to be using Pro L to do the maximizing, the limiting in my mastering anyway. I can just use this. So if anyone has any more questions, you can ask them now, because I think I'm probably gonna stop streaming. Because I think I've explained everything I needed to explain. So if anybody has like any specific questions or anything, feel free to ask them. Do you use more than one limiter typically? How do you mean? Like, I mean like on my master channel? Not really, because one limiter is already gonna limit, so I don't really feel like I need to use two. Sometimes you'll see two limiters, but they're probably turned off. Like, for example, there's one here, but this one is turned off, so I'm not using it at all. Do you think it's better separating songwriting and sound design / mixing on making music? It's a good idea, I think. Here's the thing: when doing mix sounds is like for majority of the time, mix sounds are objective. So if, like, for example, right now I have a writer's block. I haven't made any new music in like 2 months. I've just been working on mixing and mastering for the past 2 months. The thing is that I don't need to be in a creative mindset to do a mixdown or a master. You can just do it like that. It's not something where you have to be in a good mood, or you need to feel good, or you need to be inspired or whatever. You can do it whenever you would like doing it. But writing a really cool melody, a really cool vibe, a really cool story for your music, that's something you need to be in that mindset. You need to feel what you're doing in that moment, and that's not something you can predict. So should you separate the songwriting and the mixing? In my opinion, yeah. You should get the idea of the song down as quickly as possible, because you can do the mixing whenever. Like, you can do the mixing now, but you can also do it tomorrow or next week or next month. That's no problem. You can do it whenever you like. But writing a cool melody, writing a cool story, writing a cool idea, that's something you need to be in the moment. And if you focus on mixing and sound design in that moment, then that feeling is gonna go. That feeling is gonna go away. It always goes away. It always comes back, but it always goes away. So, in my opinion, you should, if you can, not focus on mixing, or completely not focus on mixing for, at least a little bit, so you can get the idea down of your song. I think I showed like the first version of Glow at the beginning of the stream, and it sounded really bad. Really bad mixdown, really bad sound design. But the songwriting part was already there. And that's the most important bit. At the end of the day, people will remember the songwriting and not really the mixing and the mastering, It's like a movie. You remember the story and the character of a movie, but you don't really remember what the special effects, for example, look like. When I think back of like the first Harry Potter movies, I don't think back about how bad the special effects look. I think back of the amazing story, the amazing characters. That's how you should look at music as well. Or at least in my opinion, of course. Where did the cats go? I don't know. They're probably downstairs eating or drinking or playing with each other. I don't know. What do you do to be in the creative mindset? I like watching things. I get a lot of inspiration from visuals. So I have this playlist on let's see. So there's, for example, to me is a really cool visual, and what you can do, and I'll just share this tip. You can right click a video on YouTube and then click on loop, and then it loops the video. And what you can also do is you can get a Google Chrome extension, which is called Picture in Picture. Here it is. It's from Google, and what this allows you to do is you can click the mini player button. No, you can. Wait, is it Alt 9? I can't remember what it is. Wait, I'm gonna look this up. There it is. So now I have this screen, this YouTube video playing, and it's constantly in the foreground. So I can just put this on the side, if in Ableton, for example, and I just have a really cool visual to look at. And depending on what you want, like what kind of vibe you want, you can choose any video you like. And this picture-in-picture works for anything, for any website, any video that plays on any website, you can use picture-in-picture. And this is how I made Astra. This was how I finished Astra by looking at this particular video. I think it was like, especially this part. I just thought this looked really fucking cool, and I just had that in the corner while I was making it like this. So you can, if you, for example, like, I don't know, maybe you like an 80s looking anime, for example. You can, for example, get one of these. I hope this is not suitable for work. And you can just have this picture-in-picture. And then you just have something to look at, and this helps me get into creative mindset. How do you capture video? What do you mean with how do you capture video? Like, how do you record a video on your PC? I like using Streamlabs OBS because you can do the overlays. Like, for example, the webcam. I can put my webcam wherever I want. I like using that. I think it works really well. And it's free as well. And you can use it to live stream. So you can use it to live stream, but you can also record videos with it. I like using this. The cat came back. Name again of this extension. It's called Picture-in-Picture Extension by Google. I'll just copy and paste the link into the chat. Okay. I love using this. You can also use it like, anywhere really. I sometimes use it when I'm playing games. Okay, since I'm a little bit tired and I don't see any more questions, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna end the stream. I want to thank everyone for coming out. We had more viewers than last time, which is pretty cool. And I hope you learned something today. If you have any questions about anything music production related, you can always find me on the Synth Discord, which I highly recommend checking out. There's a lot of people in there that make the same kind of music as me. There's some other big producers in there as well. Check it out. Again, thank you for coming by, and also thanks for listening to the music. Maybe I'll do one more of these streams in the future. I don't know. Yeah, that's it. So again, thank you so much for coming, and I will see you next time.